Hello everyone, Prince Dabslot here, and today I'm going to be talking about the Delta Green scenario PX Poker Night. In an isolated Air Force base, service members listen to the night sky and hear secrets not meant for human ears. This is another fantastic introduction scenario to Delta Green. This one is more of just a horror scenario than even a Delta Green scenario, as there's not a ton of investigative work going on. It's just this descent into insanity that is a treat both to run and play. So I would highly recommend this to anyone that wants to see the sanity side of Delta Green. And without further ado, we're going to go right into it. So the setup for this scenario is all your players are going to be just military members. They're not in Delta Green or know of anything about the unnatural. And they're just burnouts on this Air Force base when Majestic 12, which they won't know about, but this other government organization is going to come in and start blasting this laser beam that's going to make everyone go insane and go crazy and just descend into hellish nightmare. So your players can pick some of these characters they can do on the Air Force base. I believe there's 5 or 6 pre-gens, along with this quite a big list of NPCs. So as a scenario, you're going to be juggling a lot of NPCs. I found many of them will die off very quickly, but I think there's some good NPCs that are needed for this one. So this scenario comes with fantastic player sheets all on one page, one-sided, along with some handouts about how they're going to go crazy and the steps they're going to take. I think it's also very important that one of your players plays this character, Herrera, because they were kind of the villain of the scenario in the end, outside of, the Majestic 12 running around as this, NPC or this player goes insane, starts stripping off their clothes and axe murdering the rest of the players. So very important that we had someone play this character, this Sierra. I think the rest of them are pretty good, but this one felt kind of mandatory. And then we're going to talk in further where in this big list of NPCs, whatever your players don't play, you should remove from this scenario. This scenario has a lot going on, a lot of NPCs, a lot of hats you need to wear. In my opinion, you should cut the ones that just your players are not going to be. It just makes it easier on yourself, gives players more of the spotlight, and it's just easier to run. I would also give out these insanity cards ahead of time. They're your symptoms, temporary insanity, and permanent insanity, which I did, and I think it helped to give these out to your players ahead of time so that they can study them and kind of know how sanity works. And I used this scenario as an introduction. This was actually the second ever, my apologies, Delta Green session that we ran behind Last Things Last. So I kind of ran into this saying, hey guys, we're here to practice the sanity system. Because, again, most of us have come from just D&D, and I think some Morkborg and Cyborgs and stuff. So nothing with truly insanity like this or any system like this. So I use this as an introduction, and it was great to give out ahead of time. And I wish more scenarios had stuff like this as far as cards and interesting temporary and permanent insanity effects for NPCs and player characters that they're going to give you. So definitely give this out ahead of time. So I gave my players most of the information about the Pallet Air Force Base located here on the page above it, about where stuff is, because assumably they'd be living and working on this base, so they would know that, and it just feels a little silly to waste all this time with them asking, not knowing what the building does, even if this is just printed off as a handout like I did, to let them sit there and review and digest. And I gave this to them about a week ahead of time, just so they could know where they're going when shit starts to breaking out. They don't have to think about it. It was very cool to see them all kind of group up from separate and then plan and then split back up to do what they want to do. But they should know where stuff is and generally where to get what, versus them, exploring this base mid-scenario. This scenario is a great training ground for you as a handler to test your splitting the party. Now, I know this is a popular beginning one, so maybe you're coming from D&D or some other role-playing system where it's kind of taboo to split a party. No, your party should be split, and they should split. And you need to practice your sharp cuts. You need to be able to even just 30 seconds go around the table to give them a snap. You want to reel back that punch, and right as their character's about to be punched in the face, snap to another character. They should always be tense and waiting for their turn or their table space to come back again when they're separated. And this is going to be one where for the first half of this scenario, they're going to be separate, going about their day-to-day lives on this base. And what you should do to plan around this is you should plan at least 1 or 2 scenes per character with some NPCs for like having the general come over and get mad and pissy at one of the player characters like I did and send them to go work in the tower, which is a great point to have one player in the tower watching as all this insanity like breaks out below them inside the site. So this is a great one to practice snap cutting, and however long you think you're going to snap cut, shorten it. You should always aim to be shorter. Right when you think, oh, maybe I'm going on too long, if you even think you're going on too long, snap cut to the next person. This one should be constantly rotating the camera when the players aren't together. And just some general more stuff about the scenario before we go into the specific advice, and that is you should not be rolling for these NPC sanity. When everyone starts losing sanity, your players should just kind of be chucking dice, like feels like every 5 seconds, and then losing sanity. It should lead to this like, holy crap, what is going on? This is bad, this is terrible. But you shouldn't be doing that for your officers and the people your players aren't playing, because that's just boring. You're just sitting there and just needless bookkeeping. What you need to do is look at this chart they give you of sand loss, and you need to plan several good set pieces just to show everything going to shit. For example, my players, we physically sat there and we played poker at the table as suggested, which if you can break out like a real poker set and play some poker, awesome. And absolutely recommend you do it like the scenario suggests. Really adds to that feeling. But, we have hysterical outbursts where people are going to start running in. I think I had the song I Am the Sun. I'll link it in the post by Swans, the live version. And I just repeated the first half of that song several times as they played poker. But it's like Cowboy No Wave, and it came out around the same time, so it still works for the scenario. And the second half of the song explodes into violence, and that's when I had one of the guys walk into the tent, soaked in gasoline, lit himself on fire, as the colonel and another man start fighting and breaking out, and colonel guy's eyes gouged out, and everything's going to shit all of a sudden. But again, that is all set pieces that you need to think up and stitch together from these NPCs, temporary and permanent insanity, because they should just be going crazy. Don't make it hard for yourself and worry about their exact sanity tracking, their exact stats. Just plan some cool set pieces to nail your players with. This, more than many other Delta Green scenarios, this is a horror set piece scenario. This is one to think of like a movie. There are other scenarios that you want to run, simulationist style, use every single ammo rule, use every single distance rule, go for it. I love that shit. But this is not that scenario for it. This one should feel frantic at the edge, like they're about to explode this entire time. So just think of some cool moments. Like I said, song exploding. I have an audio link in the track that I will also put in my Dropbox of, an agent screaming, or one of these guys screaming that he's on fire, he's on fire. You want to engage all the senses that you can for these set pieces that you think up. Like I said, a guy wandering into a tent, catching himself on fire is a great one. A fight breaking out, eyes gouging out, gunfire being shot. Good stuff. So again, keep it horror based, keep it snappy, keep it tight, keep those camera angles changing. And when it explodes into violence, don't be afraid just to land some good punches. Again, just to harp on the sanity and the scenes, there is this suggestion chart that I find quite cool, and it's fun to give your players hallucinations. But again, A, if they're characters your players aren't playing that are pickable from the NPC list, delete them. You don't need them. And then B, how do you really show an NPC's hallucination? You just kind of have them go crazy. Don't roll for your NPCs, guys. Don't do it. It's not worth it. It's not worth the time investment. Just plan cool set pieces for your players. Balance is an illusion that exists in your players' minds. So don't sweat it. Just think of cool, crazy stuff to happen. So when violence does start to happen, my Herrera character, the one that was going crazy and snapping too, I had everyone keep their insanity cards separate from each other, but it was great to snap back to him where my player was really in character, and his character kept getting more and more undressed. Like every time we revisited him, he was stalking and murdering like other NPCs around the base, while my other players were, were out of character, didn't know what was going on, and were just trying to survive and running to the hangar and all that. While we kept snapping back to the fourth player at my table who was just going on a rampage and murdering people. And then eventually he ended up stalking and killing some of my other players as they went to go investigate this base, which, chef's kiss moment. A lot of it was on my players setting this up and not me, forcing it to happen. But especially if you have someone playing Herrera and they just hit zero sanity so quickly, you should absolutely snap cut to them as they're just, there's an NPC scrounging for stuff that he thinks he's hidden, and just, him walking up behind him and just axe murdering him. You don't even need to roll for half of this stuff. If it's NPC on NPC violence, don't roll for it. It just happens. If it's player on NPC violence, remember, especially if it's a sneak attack or they're unaware and incapacitated, it just hits. Like, you don't need to worry all the time about every single roll and every single pass. If someone's, helpless on the ground, there's no roll needed. They can just murder that person in a turn. So that's what we kept doing, is snapping back to the insane player as he just kept murdering more people. And eventually, like I said, stalking in the woods and in the grasses around this base, the other team who, like, in character didn't know that anything was going on, that they were being stalked, and they tried some alertness rolls and they passed, and it's contested alertness rolls versus stealth. They failed them. So in character, they didn't know. And eventually, when the ship got shot down, which I have sound effects for that in the link as well in the Dropbox, this big good microwave noise is that should be a big set piece. One stayed outside while two went inside, and the one that stayed outside ended up having that confrontation with the insane Herrera and lost, as Herrera just axed this PC to death, and hanging on by a thread. He was then gunned down by the other two as they came out of the ship after the dog. So if you have the player go insane, you should be snap cutting to them every 30, every 40 seconds as they just like wreak their own havoc, clean up and mop up all the NPCs around the base remaining, while the other players are, in the engine bay trying to turn on engines and watching this big explosion and dealing with the guards there. Which again, with the guards and the ship showing up, it gives you a timer, but really it's for cinematic reasons. And right when you think is the most, when the guards are aiming their rifles at the players and telling them to get back, and right as you think they're about to get gunned down, that's when it shows up and explodes and kills the guys, and their helmets explode and all that stuff. It should again be all about a movie scene for this one. I guess I love some exact timing in Delta Green. This is one to play like a horror movie. So yeah, if you have a player like that that's going crazy, indulge it. Let them go crazy. How often do you get to play a crazy person in these games? And make sure you pick a player or suggest that character to a player that can handle their player character, stripping naked and going absolutely apeshit on everyone in the scenario. So when the ship gets shot down, when the Migo, flying above like the big dice set that it is, gets blown up by this Majestic and comes spiraling down, and the aliens come out. This should be a great moment where your players are first, everyone's going insane, everyone's going crazy. I know a lot of people might have some preconceptions about, aliens and Delta Green, and this feeds into that. I like the little bit of twist where they don't talk in that like high-pitched, like, take you to your leader voice, but they're in fact this low, we have come here. And review what they say. Make sure you kind of memorize what they're going to say and how they're going to say it. And then have them show up with the big eyes. I like this art. I had this art on display because it's so good when the aliens show up with the red orb above them. That's the Migo, controlling them while in the ship. They shouldn't be so off-putting that your players want to kill them instantly. They should, just have the natural curiosity to go check them out. And you should present them as genuine. Like, the Migo are good. The Migo have been tricking the U.S. military into thinking that these guys are real. So they're probably going to trick your little Air Force guys, your air base guys. But this is such a peak capstone moment of like, oh wow, there's aliens. And then of course Delta Green in the genius writing has the twist on it with the Migo is actually controlling them. But that really shouldn't be obvious by their first encounter. Remember the deep voice, reread and practice their lines you're going to say to them. This should be a kind of funny and horrifying moment of, wow, this machine actually did what it was supposed to, and the aliens worked. There's no good picture of the Migo in the module, but I used this picture from the Handler's Guide located on page 217 to show the dog. And I also had audio clips ready to go of a kind of a creepy dog whining. Again, I'll put it in that Dropbox for you. But this is a scenario to engage all the senses, especially with this creepy thing, and don't even really give your agents a chance to react when it just bursts out. The aliens grab you and then they, deflate. You shouldn't be trying to kill your players right here. It should just be a good moment of something. There's another layer to it. This is when your players need to start learning that there's more, that whatever layer they think they're on, there's always one, if not several, deeper. And this is a great scenario for that. But I like this picture of the Migo a lot. I think it does a great job versus other Mego pictures I've seen from like classic Call of Cthulhu where they're a little more like lobster-like. This is a very alien creature that I just unnerves me. Like that face, deeply unnerving. Kind of insect-like. I like the claws, primo work. The stop sign is very funny to show their sense of scale. So I had this picture displayed as like a jump scare when they came up, along with the audio of the dog. It should be off-putting. Remember the stand rules for seeing these things? I mean, it looks horrifying enough. And it should kind of be clear in the reveal that the puppets, deflate and kind of lose that they were puppets and that this thing was the real controller. Make sure you kind of hit that note home about grabbing them, because the Mego doesn't really want to kill these people. It's curious. You got to understand the ultimate goal of Mego is they don't understand how humans can look at a problem and figure out if they don't know the solution. Mego know things or they don't. And the human ability of cognition and guessing and being able to get stuff correct just based on a little bit of the puzzle deeply is interesting to them. And this Mego just wants to watch these like humans like problem solve this part. So it's not a malicious entity. Mego are just kind of there to twiddle and experiment and just watch how people react, kind of like guinea pigs in this scenario, this one especially. I mean, it's trapped without the help of the aliens, but it's curious. It wants the people to come and help free it. It wants to see them, and it wants to understand how they interact and how it can control these gibbing monkeys, from one place to another. So it should be a moment of horror, wonder, and awe. So then as my players were coming out of the ship, that's when they had the confrontation with the bloodied and battered final, insane survivor who was like walking towards them with an axe, and they just like had a great heartfelt moment of oh crap, and they gunned him down. So cool moment. And then I just had some helicopter noises playing in the background so quietly, and I just slowly pushed that up at about every 10 seconds, as subtle as I could, until they're like, wait, there's helicopters, and that's when flashlights come on. That's when you want to wrap up the scenario. Full lights come on, drop to your knees, get to your grounds, hands behind your head. Everyone gets taken and arrested and processed. And that's when you have, Mrs. Green come and meet them a little bit after and say, you're in danger. Hey, get recruited to Delta Green, which was great. It was a recurring character we had that led into Convergence is another really good one. Convergence is especially funny to go into given the same, entities in charge. And it is fun to have a player that's paranoid and keyed in, being like, no, Greys are not Greys. There's something else about there. And they'll even sound insane to their teammates that maybe have played this or haven't. But after the ship, you're going to want to end it pretty quickly. There's not a ton left to do there, and that's just when you want to have Blue Fly show up, shut everything down. Of course, if they didn't shut down the array, they're probably going to be crazy by now, or do whatever. My characters fired a grenade launcher from the rifle, and I just, let him get a firearms roll, and he took his time and aimed it plus 20% and fired it and blew up everything in there. So that stopped, and Blue Fly came in and secured the base and took them away. And that's going to close us off on PX Poker Night. As my second ever Delta Green scenario when I ran this, it was a treat. This introduced me to the holy crap, what is going on part of the system, while Last Things Last is more of that creeping horror of what happens to an agent after they're too old to carry on. This is, holy shit, how are agents created? And what is Majestic 12 up to? And what the heck are the Mego and the Greys got going on? Cannot recommend this enough. It was a little difficult to run as a new handler, but just remember, if you keep those cuts snappy, keep your players anxiously waiting their turns, and have it ramp up deliciously, you are going to knock this scenario out of the park. And that's it. Thanks for 200 subs, everyone. I appreciate everyone watching. Let me know if there's any other scenarios you want to see or want to hear more about. I'm always also looking for any constructive criticism on this channel. So thanks, everyone. Have a great day.